no matter how your race goes, you'll probably have a good day on the bike. I've always said like fun is fast and fast is fun, and it's so true. I think that's something that I've kind of noticed from maybe motorsport or downhill as well. Those guys don't spend a whole lot of time on their race bikes, but when they do ride them, they ride them well and they ride them with intent. Yeah, I think there was an advantage there when you're doing
sure.
That's kind of a blurred line for me.
Greg Callaghan, welcome back to the Downtime Podcast, mate. We were just saying it was 2018 the last time you came on, which is a very long time ago in the grand scheme of things. A lot's changed, but also a lot hasn't, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, great to be back. It's been a while. A lot has happened, but yeah, as you say, it's the same. Still racing bikes. Still doing the same day today. So
yeah,
same but different.
Still living the dream. And I want to talk about like the longevity of your career, because you've been involved in mountain bike racing for a long time now, and actually involved in enduro from the very first EWS, I think, back in 2013.
Yeah. It's been put in a good shift, and it's a funny one because like a lot of people say that, and like I think there's only a handful of us like that are still around.
Yeah.
And it's not the longest time. I think like this is the 12th year of the EWS, Enduro World Cup, and like you compare that to downhill. There's multiple riders that are around longer than that, but I think the interesting thing is how much the sport has changed and evolved through that. And I think that's where we've lost a lot of riders, maybe, because a lot of the early riders were probably, blind racing style. And like, we're so far from that now. So I think for me, having come more from the downhill side originally, it was maybe easier to adapt with the sport as it went. So.
Yeah. Have you missed any events along the way?
I've only missed 4.
Okay.
So in the first year, I didn't go to the 2 North American races.
Okay, just budget related, because you were like
just didn't
full privateer.
Didn't have the money, yeah. And then I missed Samoan 2015 through injury, and Madeira 2019 through injury.
Pretty good record, though, isn't it?
Yeah. We actually went through some of the stats last year. TJ Smith, he loves the stats. We went digging, and I have no DNFs.
Yeah.
I think it's almost 80 races I've done, and I think something like 60 of them are top 30.
Wow.
So I've been pretty consistent.
Yeah, that's solid, eh?
Yeah.
Real solid. Yeah, I wanted to talk a bit about the development of enduro, because like you say, you've had a ringside seat for that, and things have changed a lot, and not even on a sort of consistent trajectory either, really. It's been like up and down and different styles and sort of finding itself. Talk us a little bit through maybe some of the specifics of what you feel's changed since back in 2013 to kind of today.
Yeah. Like I think the scope of the demands and what the sport is has really narrowed in, because the first few years we had no idea what we were in for. And you would go to a race in the French Alps and it'd be 2 massive days of racing, and like racing an hour and 20 minutes over 2 days.
Yeah.
So in terms of the pace you were riding, it was a lot less, and it was more about being smooth, being consistent. There was no track walk, so that brings the level down as well. There was no GoPros really, like cameras weren't that good then, POV cameras. Whereas now, we're track walking, we're watching GoPros. We've got 5 or 6 stages in 1 day of racing, so we're riding a lot closer to the limit now, and the margins are a lot smaller between riders for the racing. So yeah, it's definitely changed, and it's gotten a lot more professional and refined.
Yeah. How would you describe like the key skills that you need now then to be successful? Like, what are the main attributes as a rider that deliver success at a current version of the Enduro World Series or EDR?
See, this is the challenge, because it changes so much.
Even so, it's still changing, right?
Yeah, it really is. And like, even week to week this year, like our schedule's changing a bit.
Yeah.
Like, Combloux last week, we practiced and raced back-to-back days. Next week, we'll have a rest day in between. So in terms of your preparation, that changes it quite a lot. Combloux, we had a lot more endurance involved, whereas now we'll get a rest day, so there's less endurance. So you'll probably, have another couple of % to give on race day. I think in terms of skill as an enduro rider, learning tracks is probably one of them.
Okay.
Only 1 practice run. So the more you can learn from that 1 practice run is it can really help you on the race day.
Is that something you actively go and train then, like practice?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah. Without it being super intentional, because it's kind of the riding you do.
Yeah.
You go out for a 3-hour ride, you'll probably ride 3 or 4 tracks, and you might repeat a couple of them.
Yeah.
And it is something we do plan in, that I would, do a day of training and try find new places to ride.
I was going to say that's the challenge. You can't do it on a track, right? So every time you do that sort of work, you've got to go somewhere you've not ridden.
Yeah. So it is something we'll do where I might do a ride and ride 3 tracks and then go back around and ride them again and try go fast.
Yeah.
So it's definitely that'll be a skill. And then as well, in terms of the riding, being able to ride different tracks, different speeds, different trail demands.
Yeah.
There's quite a lot to it, and bike setup, and there's every element kind of comes in.
Have the stages, like as an average, got shorter? Do you think? Like we used to have some super long stages. I feel like we haven't had anything mega long for a while, but I might just be out of touch.
I think a little bit, yeah. Like the last few years, we were talking about this last weekend, that I think the longest stage in the calendar now is Tutti Frutti in Canazei.
Yeah,
and that's about 11 minutes now.
Okay.
But part of that is how much faster bikes have gotten, riders have gotten, and trail building has gotten better.
Okay.
Because like a venue like that, when we come back and repeat, the trail builders would have done touch-ups on the track and, little pinch points that would have slowed things down and made it a bit more physical and slower to add time. They might make that a nice corner.
Yeah.
So then what maybe started out as like a 14-minute stage over the years develops into an 10-minute stage.
Yeah.
So it's kind of, which came first, whether the tracks actually got shorter or we're just covering ground faster. And I think it is a challenge now for the people running the races, is to give us a course that's going to get 20 plus minutes of racing.
Mm-hmm.
Because I know that a few years ago, I'd heard that on average we descend 100 meters vertical in a minute.
Okay.
So for a 20-minute race, you need 2,000 meters of descent.
Yeah.
So you're not going to do that without an uplift.
Yep.
So even just to get a course big enough for the racing to be long enough is quite a challenge now.
Because 20 minutes is the cut off in the rule books, is it? They're trying to make sure all the races are over. Is
exactly.
Right?
It's not mandatory, but I think it's a guideline.
Yeah.
And I think everyone would want that.
Yeah.
Because we do want a decent length of race.
Yeah, fair. So you've been at this 13 years and racing bikes for longer. And I think it's fair to say like your results have gone from the highest. You've had some wins over the years, and then you've had some tougher races and some tougher times. Mm-hmm. With that like breadth of experience that you have you started to work out like why it works when it works, and maybe why it's not working when it's not working so well? Is there like, are you finding trends and correlations and starting to understand your own performance more?
Yeah, a bit. It's an ongoing thing, and that's the attraction of sport, isn't it? You're always chasing the perfect recipe.
Yeah.
For me, like I think the biggest thing is just feeling comfortable, feeling confident, feeling good on the bike. If I race day, jump on the bike and hop around the car park, do wheelies nicely, and you just feel, those days you just get on the bike and you feel good.
Yeah.
That helps. It translates onto the stages to be able to ride well. But yeah, it's definitely it's hard to find the recipe, because if there was just a checklist you could go through, then we'd all be winning every weekend, wouldn't we?
Well, yeah, this is it. And have you found ways to help yourself feel more comfortable on the bike? Because obviously time and testing and all this kind of stuff helps, but have you found techniques to sort of almost convince yourself and your mind that you're feeling good? Like maybe it is popping a wheelie or hopping around. Like I think I saw you in Tweed Valley just doing a little bit of trials, hopping across the river on some rocks, and just, I guess, becoming one with the bike at that point.
Yeah, that's it. And as you say, it is kind of convincing yourself. And, I think a big part of it is quietening the brain a bit, and not having too much of a busy mind coming into racing. So there's that, the mental performance side of it. And then there's hopping around on the bike. It just makes me feel light, sharp, and kind of, as I would want to ride. But something I do as well, like I try not to ride the race bike too much.
Okay.
Because the hours we do, on a weekly basis, there are days where you feel tired, or you're going to do intervals and you're going to feel bad after that, and they be the days where I'd be like, okay, I'll ride the small travel bike or the road bike or whatever, so that I just go out and I do the physical focus of the session, and then the more technical days I'll be like, right, I'll get on the race bike, and then when you throw the leg over that bike, it's like, I'm going to ride it well, I'm going to ride it fast, and then you kind of build good habits on that bike.
Yeah, you associate that bike with riding well, because you're not hopping on it like hanging after an interval session in the morning or something like.
Yeah, exactly. And there's some sessions where we'll want to ride it tired, because that's enduro racing.
Yeah.
But and as well, like when you have it set up for racing, it'll feel really good when you're on and you're riding well.
Yeah.
And then you might get on it not feeling good, and you'll start being like, the bike feels this, bike feels that, and you'll make changes, and then it's kind of counterproductive. And I think that's something that I've kind of noticed from maybe motorsport or downhill as well, those guys don't spend a whole lot of time on their race bikes, but when they do ride them, they ride them well and they ride them with intent.
With intent is the key, I think, isn't it?
Yeah, and it's that kind of purposeful practice thing, So, I try quality over quantity.
Yeah, fair. Say. Have you ever, you mentioned the mental side, have you ever had any like support coaching on that side of things? Have you worked with people throughout that?
Yeah, on and off over the years. And then this year I've been working with someone from the APC, the Red Bull APC, which has been a great help. And it's, even when things are going well, it's a good thing to stay on top of and just keep yourself on track. So that if things arise on race day or training, whatever, you have like kind of a, like a system you can go through to get yourself on track and get yourself calmed down or get yourself in the right mindset, because the mental side of things, it's quite often overlooked, but it's something you need to train as well. Yeah. It's not something, it's not like you feel bad and you can do this quick fix. It's something you have to kind of work on and build upon and train. Yeah.
Yeah. Do you feel you can train it away from the races, or do you need the pressure of a race to be able to like train that the muscle of the brain, if that makes sense?
I think so. I think I can, because there's always, with training, there's always an element of pressure as well.
Okay. Yeah. Well, because someone else is going to see your numbers, like you're working with your coach, and
yeah, exactly. There's always a reason to be on, at least once or twice a week, even in the middle of winter. There's a reason where you're going to be measured or where you want to perform well, even if it's just against yourself. So they're all chances to train those things.
Yeah. And what does that like structure or toolkit look like for you then, if you're at a race and things aren't quite right, like in the mindset? What techniques do you use to try and bring things back?
A lot of it is breathing based for me.
Okay.
Just slow breaths, focusing on your breathing.
Yeah.
And that just kind of brings you into the present moment rather than thinking of what has happened before or what's coming next. It brings you into the here and now, which is very important. I've had races where I've spent the whole off season dreaming of results and a podium or whatever, and then I'll get to the race and I'll still be thinking about those results, and you're completely overlooking what you're doing right now.
Yeah.
So for me, like, I try focus on the process, which is quite cliche, but it does work. Because if you focus on stage by stage, turn by turn, as good as you can, the results will kind of come by themselves. So it's trying to bring yourself back to that.
Amazing that breath work is such a simple thing and feels like a lot of people just, I think, discount it because it's not complex enough. It's like, surely that's not going to work. But it is super centering and relaxing to just focus for a bit and slow it down. And I think a lot of us breathe naturally in the modern world, like breathe too fast and shallow. So taking the time to do that properly. And do you find that helps like physically as well? Do you think you've improved your breathing in race?
Yeah, actually, because I've actually noticed it on my GoPro. So I don't use a GoPro in racing, but even in training.
Yeah.
Before I could kind of hear myself tensing and not breathing. And it was really like, it sounded like I was struggling to breathe a little bit when I was riding. And now I'll hear myself taking more smooth breaths, more controlled breaths.
Yeah.
Which, you hear powerlifters in the gym, it's all about breathing, isn't it? So you get your strength from breathing correctly.
Yeah.
So,
and again, it's another muscle to train, right? That you use muscles to breathe, and I think we don't use them well enough, I think, a lot of the time. So
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And especially I think in a sport where, we're quite red line on the heart rate. So you need to be getting air in, otherwise you're going to be hanging.
Yeah. And so over the time, like, has your enjoyment varied as well?
Yeah, it's actually, that's something that's been very interesting for me, because I think COVID was a big learning curve for me, especially because the racing disappeared, and all of a sudden, at least in a racing sense, there was no reason to get up and train, and it was kind of perspective changed. It was a bit like, oh, what's all this for, because this massive problem was facing us. And I kind of learned to enjoy the training. And it was a thing from Killian Jornet in a book from him. He was saying that, like, if advice for a young person would be teach them to love training.
Okay. And
it'll be so easy for them. And it's so true, because now I enjoy the training, and like, I'll see a session that before I would have been like, oh, that's going to be painful, And now I'll look at the numbers and I'll be like, oh, that's going to be really good. And I reckon I can maybe get a little more or whatever. And it's kind of exciting to me.
Yeah. How have you convinced yourself that like a horrible session is going to be fun? Because like a lot of people would like to be able to be there, right?
Yeah, I don't really know, and I think it's the buzz afterwards.
Yeah.
I think knowing that afterwards you're going to be proud of yourself and you're going to be pretty stoked on it. So yeah, it's weird. Like now I'm kind of, Chris Camara, my coach, like he kind of nearly has to hold me back sometimes because I want to do more and I want to just keep suffering. And I think sometimes I need to pull myself back onto the technical side of things as well and realize that it's not only big watts that are going to win races. So you have to calm down on that side as well.
Have you got better at suffering? I think again, it's a skill.
Yeah, I think so. I think even just that learning to, like, I'm not so afraid of it anymore. And then, the efforts have gotten more controlled as we use more power and stuff. It's less just going all out and it's more controlled, hitting zones and targets.
Yeah. Have you found that helps from a kind of like recovery and fatigue perspective? Being very targeted using power rather than just being like, well, this is a 9 out of 10 and actually you're probably doing 11 out of 10 without realizing it, and the session's not very consistent. And
yeah, absolutely. And even more so on the lower end of things. So, when you're just out for an aerobic 2-3 hour ride, and you might, before I might have just been like, no, this is easy, I swear it's easy, but you're actually sitting at like 300 watts or something, and now I'll look at it and be like, no, the target is 230 watts.
It's surprisingly dull, isn't it? Those kind of it's a very low effort. You feel like you're not doing anything and you're cheating yourself, but
and now I'm nearly more proud of myself when I finish a ride and like the average power is as low as it should be. Nice, I didn't get carried away.
You didn't go chasing roadies or anything. And
exactly, I'm so bad for that. Like, so if we're out on the road bike and someone doesn't say hello, it's just like, right, we're racing now.
I'm gonna have you. I know what you mean. Yeah. And so the enjoyment side of things, do you think there's been a correlation between enjoyment and results for you?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
I've always said like fun is fast and fast is fun.
Yeah.
And it's so true. Like the days when you're just enjoying riding your bike and you're looking at the trail in front of you and you're kind of stoked to smash that turn and pop off that jump, and they're the days things flow well, link together nicely, and it does work out to being fast, I think.
Yeah. And have you found a recipe at races to help yourself have more fun, to kind of be happier?
Yeah, I think it's a combination of things. Just having good people around you, having a good bike, being excited about the course, not worrying too much about the external noise if people are complaining about X, Y, and Z, just kind of putting that aside and not focusing on it too much and just being positive, really.
Yeah, I guess there has been, like, it certainly feels like there's been some negativity around the entire kind of mountain bike racing thing. Is obviously with all the Warner Brothers stuff, and there's been a lot of, I don't know, hate or online or whatever. Like, there's definitely been negativity floating about, and probably more so in enduro. I guess it's hard to in a way, not get wrapped up in that. Yeah,
absolutely. And like, I definitely have gotten wrapped up in it more than I should at some races. But I think this year I've kind of, with doing my own program and kind of looking at things through a slightly different perspective, I kind of realized that a lot of the negativity isn't justified. And a lot of it sometimes reflects on people's personal, if they're not having a good weekend or something, it's kind of easier to point fingers at other things, isn't it? So,
true.
Yeah, I think overall things are good, and I think no matter what, there will be complaining, but you just have to
always, right?
Yeah, not let it drag you down, I guess.
Yeah. And has the format shifting and changing over the years? Has there been a correlation again there with like happiness and enjoyment? Do you prefer a certain style, or do you just love racing bikes?
Yeah, I just love racing bikes, to be honest. Yeah, like I think an example of that would be last week I did the e-bike race as well. A completely different format, but just as much fun.
Yeah.
It's just bike racing. Yeah.
Hey, I wanted to ask about that because I've not actually sat down with anyone, I don't think, yet that's done an EDR. Talk us through the format as it stands currently, firstly.
Yeah, so it's quite similar to Enduro, really. Similar liaison stages. Last weekend we had 2 extra downhill stages. One of them had like some climbing that you could say was specific to e-biking.
Yeah.
And then there's 2 power stages, which are more uphill but technical stages to kind of use the e-bike for what it can do over a normal bike.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think the overall experience is quite similar. Just the liaisons. Like there was one liaison we did in the EDR was just a hike.
Okay.
And it's a hike, which kind of sucks, but then we were a group of like 10 people and we were just hiking for an hour and a half chatting.
Yeah, it's not exactly bad, is it?
So it's not bad at all. Whereas on the e-bikes, we rode it, which is nice to be pedaling up, But because the e-bikes, you finish a stage and everyone just keeps riding. And with an e-bike, everyone climbs at the same speed.
Yeah.
So like I climbed up it alone with, 2 guys ahead of me, and they just stayed the same distance ahead of me.
Yeah, there's no chat.
There's no chat.
Yeah.
So as nice as it is to cover more ground, you kind of lose the social aspect a little bit, which is a bit of a shame, because that's one of the attractions of enduro.
I was going to say, it feels like that's quite a big part of enduro. A lot of you lot, when I speak to you, mention that, like the camaraderie, and you'll become pretty good mates because you're just out suffering together and chatting on the liaisons.
And that, like, for me, it was one of the big attractions at first of enduro was, no matter how your race goes, you'll probably have a good day on the bike.
Yeah.
So you'll always come away from an event with something that you're like, that was cool.
That was pretty good. Yeah. Is EDR, is it a single battery day? Are there multiple batteries? How's that working?
It's 2 batteries at the moment.
Okay.
I think it was 3 in the early days, whereas now it's 2 loops, 2 batteries.
Yeah.
And you'll use them fully.
Yeah. And are you having to conserve battery at all, or can you pretty much go like all in on it? Yeah,
you can. Like the first loop on Sunday, I rode most of the climbs in tour mode, which is quite low assistance. So and I finished with just like 10% of battery, I think.
Okay, fair. Yeah. So you do have to, you can't just like boost mode the whole thing.
No, and there have been races where people have dropped into last stage with no battery.
Okay.
So you do have to manage it.
Yeah. And how would you compare like the physicality in the Comblow event, for example, from the EDR to the eEDR?
Yeah, so it's shorter day out and more intensity.
Okay.
So we did, including the power stages, we did 10 stages. So that's 10 times you're getting your heart rate max.
Yeah.
And then rather than having 2 hours between a stage, you might have 45 minutes or an hour.
Yeah.
So you feel like you're constantly just bouncing between red line and trying to recover and then red line again. So it's definitely a more intense day.
Yeah, interesting. And there's been some talk around, I guess, the sort of sporting side of that, in that I think for you were like, I'll just do a bit more bike riding and this will be fun. But then there's other people that are there specifically for the EDR. And then I think you can sort of compete in the EDR, and there's quite a bit of overlap in the tracks. So there's like a benefit maybe. All right, you drain yourself physically a little bit, but you can kind of go and race the EDR and learn and get in a bit of an advantage for the eEDR. Like, how did you feel about that side of stuff? Because it's a tricky one. Enduro's always had that balance between purity and like the not blindness because you've got one run, but like trying to control pre-riding and all that stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. It's such a big element, trying to keep that fair. And like a lot of the e-bike guys raced a normal race last week because it was an extra lap on the tracks.
Yeah.
To me, I think that it depends on the rider. Like for me, when I lined up on Friday for the EDR, I could do a full run in my head of each stage.
Yeah.
I knew the stages pretty well from practice GoPros track walks. So I don't think by Sunday I'd really improved that much.
Okay.
But I know that on Sunday I woke up and I was really tired from Friday.
Yeah, okay.
So it's kind of hard to weigh up which is helping and hindering.
But then you're going all in on the Friday because that's your focus. Whereas an eEDR rider might be like somewhat chilling, but getting the practice in and then a bit fresher on the Sunday, I guess. So it's like...
Yeah, exactly. That's it. And even there's another level. There was a rider going around with a media plate on Friday.
Interesting.
Who was doing media stuff, but was also racing the e-bike on Sunday. So that's... Yeah, I think there was an advantage there. When you're doing that's kind of a blurred line for me. It's a tricky one. I don't know how they can police it.
Yeah.
Because you can't... some people want to race both and they want to go hard at both, and some are going to use it to their advantage. So.
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? Like every sport, whatever, people will find a loophole, right? It's even though it might not be the kind of sporting thing, it's sort of done everywhere, right? Like marginal gains and little gaps in the rule book, and we see it in F1, we see it in road cycling, I'm sure, and all these areas. So
yeah, absolutely. But at the end of the day, to be fair, the top of the results sheet usually looks quite similar.
Yeah,
like Antoine Rogg, who won last weekend, he didn't race on Friday.
Yeah, fair.
So you could say that was because he had fresh legs, or he was just better than everyone else.
Yeah.
So yeah, there's always these ways, but at the end of the day, it's usually the best will win.
It's interesting. Yeah, Jesse Melamed made the same comment earlier this week that some people might turn up and pre-ride at a venue, but at the end of the day, it's still the same people at the top of the timesheets. Like
exactly.
The people that might have been 60th might come 30th, but the top people are still the top people.
Yeah, exactly. And I think among the top people, there's not really any of that going on.
Yeah,
certainly not much of it anyway. So it's a pretty level playing field.
Yeah, that's cool. Coming back to the physical side a little bit, like, has your approach to training changed over the years, either because of the sort of changing nature of what enduro is, or like through experience or age, right? Like you can train differently at the age of 20 than at the age of 30. I think like I've certainly felt that change. Maybe I'm quite a bit older than you, but
yeah. I've been tired a lot this year. I don't know, is it age or just because I'm going hard?
Going hard, yeah.
Yeah, I think definitely it has, and I think like with the years, like I've built up a certain resilience to big days out and to endurance and that kind of thing.
Yeah, you've got a good like a base engine that almost just stays there, right?
Yeah, exactly. Because that's always kind of ticking over.
Yeah.
I think like in the early days, it was just trying to survive big days.
Yeah.
And be strong while you were doing it. Whereas now it's kind of more trying to be explosive and maybe closer to downhill style training because, as you say, the stages are getting a bit shorter and we're riding at 100% all the time. So you really need that max power and that max speed.
Yeah. Which is harder to keep, right? That's the first thing to go if you have a bit of a break.
Yeah, exactly. And that's it. Like I actually on Sunday rode around with a guy who's an ex-road pro and we were talking about this kind of stuff and we were saying how, you know, your max power is cool. You can brag about that.
Yeah.
But it's, you know, if you're going to do a load of 5 on, 5 off sprints, it's the 5th or 6th one that really matters.
Yeah, that repeat power.
Yeah, because that's what enduro is. You know, you hit a corner, you sprint. You hit the next corner, you sprint. And if your first corner is massive, that's cool. But you need to be doing it for the whole stage. So yeah, it's kind of that strength fatigue.
Yeah. Do you use creatine for that? Like that seems to help repeat power stuff a little bit.
Yeah, I do.
Yeah. Do you notice the difference with it, or are you kind of on it consistently? And
yeah, I think I'm probably on it consistently enough that it's hard to tell.
It's a baseline. Yeah, fair. No, it's definitely a good supplement for sure. And I spoke to your coach earlier in the week, Chris Kilmurray, and he said you're an absolute animal this year. What would you put that down to? What's different in that respect?
Yeah, I guess consistency is a big one. Like I've had a good few consistent years of training.
Yeah.
So now that, you know, when you get a good block, your base is already so good that if you get a good 4 or 5 weeks training, you're really springboarding from there.
Yeah.
I've been based in France in the Alps this year.
Yeah, you made the move to Annecy, right?
Yeah. So that's helped a lot. Like especially on the physical side, you know, having big hills where you can do all your intervals and you can really get the quality out of a session.
Because where were you based before?
In Dublin.
Okay.
Which is amazing, and like I've always said, it is actually some of the best riding in the world.
Yeah.
Even if maybe people don't realize it, it is incredible. But in terms of training, like it's just hard to find hills long enough and hills consistent enough.
Yeah.
And even people to train with. Whereas kind of around here, there's a lot of good riders you can train with. So.
And you're spending more time at altitude, I guess, which is probably not a bad thing.
Yeah, at least this time of year. Yeah. Like in the winter, you wouldn't get that high, but yeah, this time of year you are getting regularly up above, you know, 1,000 meters, 1,500 meters, which is
where
helps.
Most of the EDR events are going to take place, I guess, at some level of altitude, which you're not getting in Dublin.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, like last week, I think a lot of the stages were 1,700, 1,800 meters.
Yeah, so you're more conditioned to that. Like,
yeah, true.
Yeah.
And the heat as well in summer. It gets really hot. So that's something that as an Irishman, it's good to get used to.
Fair play. Is it hard to stay motivated, like year after year after year, to keep doing this? Because, you know, what people see is the racing and the fun sort of glamorous side of it and all these awesome shots from the races and, you know, champagne and all that jazz. But like the work's done in the off season, right? And in between, and that's the much less glamorous part of it. How do you stay motivated to keep at it? And
I think that's where that change for me of learning to enjoy the training and not seeing it as like, I want this result, so I have to do this. It's more like I want to do this, and as a result, I'll get a good result.
Yeah.
So that's made it so much easier for me. Like I actually really enjoy the off season now and the routine of just training every day.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's been brilliant. Really.
Is there any monotony to it, or do you try and like make enough change to your program that every off season feels like a little bit different?
Yeah, I think there's always changes just coming as a result of like, okay, in 3 weeks we're going to go to somewhere sunny to get some good riding or good testing or whatever. So then you'll have these 3 weeks where you try to be consistent, and that will be different to the 3 weeks before because of the kind of evolution of the off season. So there's always something kind of new and interesting.
Yeah.
And or even if it's the same for a few weeks, you're still trying to beat the week before. So there's always something that you're kind of keeps it interesting.
Has the move out here helped as well, right? for a while, every ride's going to be a new ride sort of thing. Like even on the road, it's roads you've not ridden before. And
yeah, exactly. That's it. A lot of rides end up being longer than planned
because you get lost.
You look at the map and you're like, oh, I'll just go up there, and then you realize that climb takes 2 hours, and the hills are a lot bigger. Especially when you zoom out on the map, they get smaller. But
yeah. Nice. Let's talk a bit about the change in program. So you were on Da Vinci for a while, up until the end of 2023. At what point did you know that wasn't going to be the case for 2024? Like, when did you find out you were going to be looking elsewhere?
Pretty early on. Like, I think we could see the signs that Da Vinci were kind of changing their direction in terms of the bikes they were producing and selling and the markets they were focusing on. And then I think around June last year, we were told the team wouldn't continue. So pretty early on, but it was kind of at the same time people were realizing that the bike industry wasn't doing so well.
Yeah.
And Enduro was probably going to take the brunt of that.
Yeah,
so
the bubble burst a bit, didn't it?
Yeah, exactly. So at first it was kind of reaching out to teams and brands that I wanted to ride for, and it was kind of starting to realize like, this isn't the usual year of negotiating.
Yeah.
So then it kind of put things in perspective for me a lot. And, I haven't had a tough few years and a couple of years where I was kind of finishing races feeling I hadn't given my best and not leaving super proud of my performance.
Okay.
So it was kind of like, right, what's my priority for next year? And it was to finish this season proud of my results and in a position where like I'm racing at my best, or at least I have the tools to race at my best.
Yeah.
So I kind of narrowed it down to a few teams that like, yes, I would like to ride for these teams. And they would get the best out of me.
And is that based on like looking at bikes and kit that those teams have? Is it based on looking at the team kind of infrastructure or the team vibe? Like, what was attracting you to certain areas?
Yeah, it's kind of a bit of both.
Okay.
So the bike is obviously a massive part of it. It needs to be a bike that works well, and then the people around, the infrastructure around.
Yeah.
Who your teammates would be, because obviously you want someone that you're gonna vibe with and work well with, which to be fair is kind of most people in Enduro. I don't think there's anyone that would have a red flag.
Yeah, it seems a good crew.
Yeah. So I reached out to a few teams, and then that wasn't working out because they were sorted really.
Yeah.
So then I kind of realized like, right, what do I need to do well?
Was there ever a thought of like, maybe this is it? Did you ever have that, or were you just like, well, I'm going to make this work, whatever?
Yeah, and that was interesting because I got like pretty deep through the off season before I realized that didn't happen.
Okay.
And I was kind of, because then it was always just building towards whatever's next.
Yeah.
And it would have been an easy time to say, I'm done.
Yeah.
I've had a good run, but no, it never crossed my mind, to be honest.
That's cool.
Yeah, which was really cool.
Yeah.
I love it. Like I'll keep going for a while.
Good.
But so I kind of figured out what do I need, and step one of that is a good bike. I need a mechanic around me and good people around me.
Yeah.
And they're the kind of the main pieces of the puzzle, because the interesting thing with Enduro, like with downhill now, we see, you look at track walk photos and there's 20 people on a team. Like it's crazy.
It's insane.
Whereas Enduro, it's quite different because like on a practice day, we're out on the bike all day. We're not in the pits.
Yeah.
So even if you have a massive team, you're not really with them.
Yeah.
And while it does help, it's not everything. So, riders are a lot more kind of independent, I would say.
Yeah, self-sufficient up to a point. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And even a lot of the planning that goes into a race week, in a lot of teams, it would be the rider that does it anyway, because we're the ones that understand the course and the practice schedules and what needs to be done.
Yeah.
So, I think I'd kind of already been maybe steering the ship a bit.
Yeah.
With teams I've been on before. So to now say like, okay, I'll just take everything else on my shoulders a bit. It wasn't. It was a lot more, but not.
Yeah,
as
not
big a step as it could have been.
And you've done the privateer thing. You've done the van life version. So you've experienced it at all levels. I guess you know what it takes.
Yeah, exactly. And even just being around racing so long, like I know what I need, and I know what happens in a race week and needs to happen in a race week. So it's pretty quick. You can make a checklist that you need to go through.
Yeah.
So So once I established kind of what I needed, I kind of looked around, see what bikes are on the market, what bikes I want to ride, and kind of came to 3 or 4 bikes. And I reached out to the guys at Ibis, and because they were on that list obviously, and straight away Tom, the president, who I've kind of spoken to a few times over the years, whatever contracts come up, but it's never lined up. And he was straight away just super honest and just like, this is what we can do.
Yeah.
He from the outset was like, we're not going to build a team around you or anything like that, but yeah, you can ride our bikes. So that was like, yeah, okay, let's do that.
Nice.
That's a bike I want to ride. And a week later, I had the frame there and got
That's
it built
cool.
up. So
When was that? Like how early?
that it was quite late.
Okay.
Things had ran on quite a lot. So that like I got the bike. I think the first ride was actually like the 1st of January.
Oh wow. Okay. Fair play. Yeah.
Yeah, but
And gelled straight away.
Yeah, like the first run. I've got a couple of clips from like my first run on the bike.
Yeah.
And it's like it was at home.
Nice.
I just felt at home. Like it's just it's an easy bike to ride. It's an easy platform to ride.
Yeah.
You know, when you're braking, not braking, the bike doesn't behave too different. So it's just the kind of bike you can just jump on and ride. And I think it's that platform, like the DW Link, like even the e-bike is the same. It's DW Link. And
Yeah.
I raced it last weekend, but I'd only ridden it 4 or 5 times before that.
No way.
And I'm not someone who really rides an e-bike that often,
Yeah.
at least in years past. Now in France, it's a bit more attractive.
Yeah.
But, you know, all I did on that bike was set the sag and then went and raced it and managed to get 5th. So, like, I think that's a testament to just how rideable that platform is.
And does it feel similar, other than the weight, to your race bike? Like with the same, you know, with the DW Link and everything, I guess the kinematic is to some extent similar.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Was it a relief then when you finally swung a leg over that and were like, good, this thing is fast, we're all right?
Yeah, it really was. Because obviously it's such a gamble I'd taken on myself to do this.
Yeah.
And you want it to pay off, and it was kind of jumping on there. Like, yeah, you would know pretty quickly, like, right, maybe I'm off, or
Yeah.
you get on a good bike and it's like, right, okay, no, I can still ride a
We're
bike. Good.
cooking. Yeah. What about the rest of the setup then? Because you've got a number of other brands like helping out.
Yeah. So Rockstock suspension. So that was one I tested in the off season, and straight away loved it as well. Easy to set up.
Yeah. Were you on Fox before with Da Vinci?
Yeah, I've been on Fox. I was on Fox most of my career. Really.
Yeah. Okay. So another big change, right? Because
it was a big change.
They all do the same thing, but in different ways, and like the adjustment doesn't work quite the same, and it takes a bit of learning.
Yeah, absolutely. But yeah, again, the RockShox, it's a lot easier to set up, and yeah, I think the attraction for me was just that small bump sensitivity that it has.
Yeah.
Which for me is quite important. So
what's your grip, I guess, to an extent, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
that's it. So that was good. Hayes brakes, kept them. SCG saddles, wolf tooth components on kind of a lot of the finishing kit, which was really cool. Once contacted them, they were super keen to be part of the whole thing, which is really nice. And that's something that's been cool, is that dealing with the sponsors myself now, you kind of you see how keen they are to help and to be a part of it, and you kind of build that relationship with them.
Yeah.
Whereas when you're on a team, the riders don't often get that.
Yeah, you don't have that direct connection. I guess it shows you're doing something right, huh? If you ring up a brand and be like, "Hey, I'd like to use your stuff," and they're keen, that's a good sign that you're promoting yourself well, and that you're a character they want to associate with.
Yeah, exactly. It's a good reassurance.
Yeah.
And then Silt Wheels, which is cool. It's an Irish brand.
Ah, nice.
Which is class. It's really good.
In carbon or
alloy?
Okay. Yeah.
I've never gone over to the carbon wheels.
Okay. Have you ridden them? Tried them?
Not really. Not on an enduro bike.
Yeah.
Only ever on small travel bikes. But I've just seen a few races be ended by carbon wheels, so it gives me the heebie-jeebies.
Fair.
And I like a compliant wheel, and that's kind of what alloy gives you. So I don't see a reason to change, to be honest. For me, anyway. Conti tires, which is one, like, I just started out buying them just to try, because everyone was raving about them.
Yeah.
So I bought a few in the off season to try, and they were brilliant, really good, especially at home in kind of the softer conditions. They were really digging in nice.
Yeah.
So I was prepared to just buy them for the year, and then they kind of were happy to help out. So that's worked out well.
Amazing.
Obviously, tires is a big expense.
Yeah, they are these days. And you guys get through them as well, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So
Wow. So, but there's a lot of work to put that together, and that comes with stress. And stress, whether that's training stress or life stress, it can only take so much. So did it take away from your training in any way, do you think, this winter?
At the start, yeah, for sure. I was quite fortunate that it was a late start to the season. So I kind of gave myself until Christmas, New Year to really put a lot of time into this. And then I was kind of like, right, whatever it is at that point, we'll just crack on with it.
Yeah.
Because it was full on, a lot of stress, and like at first I was trying to build it as a team with 3 riders.
Okay.
But it was quite apparent that budgets weren't going to stretch to that, and it was putting a lot of pressure on me to be accountable for other riders as well.
Would you have been like team manager then in that case?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So it would have been the same as it is now, just with a couple of riders
Yeah.
as well. But that was a lot of pressure. And then once I kind of realized that was going to be money out of my pocket to pay other riders,
Yeah.
which I wasn't really in a position to do. I kind of knocked that on the head, and then that lifted a massive weight. And then, that was around Christmas time. So I kind of had enough of a package together at that point to be like, right, let's crack on with this. And I can kind of flip my focus now into training.
Yeah,
so
that's
then
cool.
we really got stuck into training from then on.
Could you see yourself being a team manager at some point in the future then? Like, was that something that you just felt you were going to do because your hand had been forced a bit? Or do you have a bit of a desire maybe one day?
Yeah, definitely. Like, my goal with this would be to build it into a proper team.
Yeah.
And, maybe after racing could be a team manager, because I love racing, and it's something I think at this point I know quite a bit about. And, even as a racer, I still quite like to help other riders, or like give a bit of advice here and there where I can. So it'd be really cool to use that knowledge after racing.
Yeah.
To help others. So
that'd be cool.
Yeah, hopefully it can build.
Yeah, nice. That'd be ace. Let's talk a bit about this season then. Like, how did you feel coming into the first round? Do you feel like you were ready? Obviously, a lot of change, a lot of things to get used to, and that. But
yeah, I did, for sure. I kind of knew that was you can feel when you're going well, and even before the season starts, you don't really know, but when you're good, you kind of know you're good.
Is it a feeling or is it numbers? Like, what's telling you that you're good?
It's like things get easier.
Okay.
You're training easy, the numbers are good, you get on the bike and it's just easy to turn it on and go fast.
Yeah.
You're not fighting it, you're not struggling. And I kind of had that. So, coming in, I felt good. And we had a good course in finale. It was a good physical course, which I knew would kind of suit my strengths.
Hugely physical, from what everyone had to say. Yeah,
it was. And it was great, to be honest. Like, I'm all for that, because I think endurance is a part of the sport that we should have.
Yeah.
So it was a proper day out.
Tight liaisons as well, right? Super hot.
Yeah, really hot. Tight liaisons. I think the tight liaisons maybe surprised quite a lot of people, and the intensity and the heat.
Because it hadn't been tight for a while, hey? Is that why it was a surprise, or?
Yeah, I think maybe.
Yeah.
It could have been, yeah. And I think the physicality of the stages adds to that as well, because, every time you bury yourself on a stage, you get a bit slower on the next climb.
Yeah, and I guess you can't really simulate that on your practice lap, right? You're never going to go as hard in stage, so the transition feels like, oh yeah, that's okay, I can do that in that time. And
so that's actually an interesting one, because like in finale we shuttled pretty much all the stages, so we hadn't ridden the liaisons in practice yet.
Okay, interesting.
And that's been a bit of a theme this year, that like it was the same in Combloux last week. There was a lot of, we could use the lifts and stuff in practice, and we did like a different loop in practice than we do in the race.
Yeah, okay.
So then, and they give us, before practice, they give us liaison times that they're going to use.
Yeah.
And they say to us kind of, check these.
Yeah, but how
but if we're not riding the liaison, we can't check. So then we don't know if they're tight. And like, if we were to ride the course, a few of us would probably time the liaison, and then we would say like, oh, I think this one's a bit tight. And they probably would add on 5 minutes or whatever. So, but if we're not if we're not checking that, then how are we to know? So like for me, I would actually like to see it that in training we just ride the course the same as we race it.
Yeah.
Because it also like it adds an advantage to those who have the support.
Yeah.
So like this year there's quite a few privateers around, and I'm fortunate enough that I have a mechanic and people to help me, so I can be shuttled around in practice. But for some people, like, you don't have that luxury. So there are people riding the course in practice, and we're getting a lift up.
The shuttles aren't being put on by the organisers then. They're like you have to sort out your own shuttling.
Yeah,
but
exactly.
It's allowed in the format. Yeah.
So I think it'd be cool if we just rode the course in practice as it is in the race.
Do you think they're doing the lift and the shuttling thing to help keep you fresher, so that the racing's more intense and like more of a spectacle? Do you know why it's going that way?
Potentially, yeah. Okay. It's kind of always been that way.
Okay.
It's nothing new.
Yeah.
And I think it's kind of venue dependent. Some venues, you just have to pedal it because it's only fire roads, and others there's lifts and tarmac roads around. So it kind of just depends on the venue.
Okay. So finale felt good then?
Yeah. Yes, it was great. It was just one of them days where it felt easy. I felt like I could just ride a little bit over the edge and smash all the pedaling, and it just felt good. And I didn't know the times for the first few stages. And after stage 3, it was a real physical stage, and I was pedaling up just after with Hugo Pigeon, who's a beast. Like, he's so strong. So I said to him, I was just like, oh, did you smoke us on that one, Hugo? And he was just like, no, you smoked us. I was like, Really? Okay. And like so I was seated around 20th.
Yeah,
so
yeah.
there's still quite a lot of riders to come. But at least at that point, like I was in the hot seats. I was like, okay, maybe we're...
Because when you watch the live like timing thing, quite often Hugo will be at the top for a while.
Yeah.
Because he's like one of the faster in the second pack kind of thing.
Yeah.
And then all the rest come through and pip him. But
so I kind of knew like, the feeling is good, but also the timing is good. So
would you normally not look at the times then? Are you someone that stays away from that, or
it kind of depends. That day was just so hectic that we didn't have a chance.
okay, too busy?
Like we were literally too busy.
Yeah.
We hadn't really rested at all up to that point.
Okay.
Sometimes like I'll generally try not to look after the first stage.
Yeah.
Because quite often you can have one stage that the times might be really tight and your position is like 30th, but you're actually like 3 seconds off top 10 or whatever. So you might just glance at it, see 30th, and then get a bit deflated.
Yeah.
So I'd rather kind of look after 2 or 3 stages, and it kind of balances out then.
So did you start to realize where you were in the overall kind of midday then, or?
Yeah, and I didn't look into it too much. I just knew I was around the top 10.
Yeah.
Which I was just like, yeah, that's good. Keep going.
That's where we want to be, right?
Yeah. And then, we had a stage cancelled, unfortunately. There was a girl crashed at the top of stage 4. So that one was cancelled. And then, stages 5 and 6 were good and actually kind of got better as the day went on. So like I was 4th on the last stage. Sorry, there was only 5 stages, I think. 4th on the last stage, DH men. And felt it was kind of buzzing after that. It was cool. Like, and same, like that was a top to bottom, just a really good race run.
Yeah.
Crowd was good, track was good. So regardless of the result, you just finish and you're just like, that was kind of the race run you dream of, where you're just swinging off it and the crowd's going wild and everything's working well.
That's such an incredible like stage. The view, I guess you're not taking in the view, but like the imagery always from that stage is incredible. Yeah,
it's amazing. It's amazing. And it's quite a scary one to race because the top, I think it's like a 4-minute stage, but the top like 2 minutes are just pedaling, sprinting. And then it kind of the hill, just like you come over a crest and it drops into the stuff you see from the photos and videos. And by that point, you're hanging. The crowd is going mental, so you're going to turn it on. And sometimes, like depending on how it's taped, you can't really see the track.
Okay.
Because the crowd is so thick.
Whoa.
And like this year, it wasn't too bad. The crowd kind of were back a bit from the track, but it can be pretty wild because you're really close to those people.
Nice. That must have felt so good though to be back in the top 10, 7th place I think it was in the finale.
Mm-hmm.
Like it's been a little while, eh?
Yeah, it had been a while. I think it was 2021 Tweed Valley. I was 8th. So that was my last top 10.
Yeah,
I've had a load of 11s and 12s, which has been really annoying. but I think like the result was one thing, but also just to race forwards, race like you're attacking the track and you're like, come on, give me more kind of thing. That was a big thing for me. It was just to finish a race feeling that good.
You tick the process goals basically.
Yeah, exactly. And it had been a while since I felt like I'd attacked a race like that. So, I was really happy.
So coming out of that, like all these big changes, stressful off season, the results there, you must have been feeling pretty confident after that one.
Yeah, absolutely. And it just made it all worth it because, like, as I say, I took a gamble on myself. So it was kind of, it was like, that gamble paid off. And whatever happens afterwards, we've got at least one top 10 for the year. So
nice.
It's a success.
Yeah. Poland, how was that? New venue?
Yeah, Poland was sick. That was a real cool race. It's always good to go to new venues. And I think venues that haven't had an event like that before, they always get so excited about it.
Yeah, the crowd seemed like it was pretty good there.
Yeah, crowd was brilliant.
Yeah.
Support was brilliant. And it was... Yeah, they really loved the Enduro as well, which was cool. Like they kind of knew all the riders, they knew what was going on. And
nice.
Like it rained for most of the race day, and the crowd was still just everywhere in the middle of the forest. You were seeing people, and fair play to them because it's not easy to spend a whole day in the rain just to watch something.
Definitely. How did that race unfold for you?
Yeah, quite good. Like it was, I felt really confident in practice because the tracks are quite similar to home. They're that kind of gradient where you're not braking too much, you're not pedaling too much, but you're always trying to generate speed.
Yeah. So
like that's something I've always been good at because at home it's more about generating speed than not scrubbing speed by braking. So it felt really good. First stage had a pretty good one, and I had Jesse starting behind me, and he came down quite close afterwards, and I was like, well, I don't want him here already. Like, not, he wasn't up my ass, but you kind of know what a 30-second interval should be. And
you've been doing it long enough that you can feel 30 seconds.
Yeah. So I knew he'd taken a bit out of me, and I was like, right, okay, that's not exactly what I want, but I think he just had a good one. And then it rained. So on the way up to stage 2, it hammered with rain. and it really changed things. So it kind of, some people have been through the stage in the dry, I think.
Yeah.
And then it was just so tricky because it rained the amount that like it wasn't completely saturated.
Okay.
Some sections were, but then some sections were dry. So it was so hard because you'd be like, okay, this is dry, there's good grip, you can crack on. And then you'd like hit a corner that would just be like ice. And you'd have a moment and that would make you like tense up, tighten up for, the next 30 seconds, and then you'd relax again, and then the same thing would happen. So I kind of struggled just to get a rhythm going for the rest of the day. Had some good stages, but just not enough. I think the level is so high now and the field is so deep that if you're not completely on, you'll quickly just drop 10, 15 places.
Yeah, it's tight, huh?
So yeah, really tight.
Real tight.
Yeah, the margins are crazy.
Yeah.
Like I think now that I was looking the other day, and I think the top 10 is spread by about like 2%, which I think is pretty similar to downhill.
Yeah.
Sometimes I think the Enduros are actually tighter than downhill,
which is wild considering the amount of time on the clock. Like.
Yeah, and the things that happen, like the mistakes everyone makes, or everything, and it all just balances out. Like last weekend, before the last stage, Richie and Alex Rudeau had, I think there was 0.05 of a second between them. So like they'd done 5 stages of racing over 6.5 hours, and they may as well have done nothing. Like, they were pretty much just starting from zero. Like, so it's amazing. It's amazing to follow. It's really interesting.
Yeah, super cool. And Leogang was another challenging one, right? Like quite wet, slippery for race day.
Yeah. Again, it was just that kind of in between where it was like kind of hard packed trails, but they just had this shine on top of them.
Yeah.
So it was just so hard to relax because it just felt like the trail was kind of trying to catch you out.
Do you feel like there's an element of luck with the races when the conditions are like that? It sounds harsh because there's a lot of skill in all of you lot, but like you sort of need things to go your way, right? You're taking risks, and sometimes they'll pay off, sometimes they won't.
Yeah, to be honest, I'm not a big fan of the word luck.
Okay, that's fair.
Yeah, like I just think everything happens for a reason.
Yeah,
like I think if someone gets a puncture and says they're unlucky, it's like, well, you might have got a puncture because you hit a rock too hard.
Yeah, it's on you. Yeah,
and I think it's kind of like you can be unlucky if it started raining when you're in the start gate.
Yeah, like a timing thing. Yeah,
but I think. Whatever the conditions are, you just need to make the best of it, really. And Leogang, maybe I didn't quite do the best of that.
Okay.
I think when it's that hard ground that you can't get your tires into, I struggle. I struggle to just relax on it. And that that race we had a couple of stages where the ground was a bit softer and it was kind of more muddy almost.
Yeah.
And I went really well on those ones.
So I was gonna say that's when the Irish light up, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's it.
Nice. What about Combloux? I was imagine that would be a sort of place that you'd quite like as well.
Yeah, Combloux was sick. I think that was one of the better races we've had in a few years in terms of tracks. Proper natural French, not super built trails, but they still work quite well, and there's still support where you need it. And
some fresh cut as well.
Yeah, some fresh cut, and that's kind of Alex Below, who does a lot of the courses. He's so good at getting creative with tracks.
Yeah,
because they're tracks that have existed before, and I think not many people had ridden them, but I don't know if we rode much of the actual tracks. He'd kind of pop on and then he'll tape in a couple of corners here and there, so it kind of takes away any kind of local advantage or anything, which is quite cool. I think what made Combloux so good for racing was that we practiced in the wet.
Yeah.
So a lot of ruts got cut in and then they kind of dried up for race day.
Oh, nice.
And some of them were mint. Some of them were really hard, but some of them were like class. So it meant like by race day you could really push on.
Yeah. Very special. So do you feel like you've got what it takes to win one of these still?
Yeah, I do.
Yeah.
I know some people might hear me say that and be like, "Oh, come on, like get a grip." But
well, I mean, 7th place in finale, right?
And that's it. And like 4th on that last stage. And I know that I do have the speed. I just need all the ingredients to line up. And even, last year I was kind of getting 20th, 30th, and now I've jumped up into the top 20 and a top 10. So it doesn't happen overnight either. So I know that if I can keep building on from where I am now, towards the end of this year into next year, I could be back at the sharp end. Yeah.
Yeah. So you think it's a matter of time rather than like any changes? Like you're happy with the process. It's just that you've got to give the process time.
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah.
And that's the thing as well with this season is that there's not much time for changes. Because,
true. It's tight, huh?
Yeah, like we're first week of July, and next weekend we have our 5th race out of 6 for the season. So pretty quickly the season's going to be nearly over.
Yeah.
And that was kind of something we were very aware of coming in this year. It was like if you start well and you're in a bit of a good rhythm, it'll keep going nicely for you.
Yeah.
So I think it's just building from here.
Yeah.
Pretty much.
How do you think like riders like Richie and Slavomir and I guess Alex, Charlie, like what do you think they're doing anything differently, or have they just had a bit more of a consistent program for longer? Or
Yeah, I think so. I think it's the consistency is the big thing, and that's what amazes me is that a race like last weekend it was hectic. There was a lot happening. It was physical, and on paper you'd be like, oh, that's a race where people are going to have crashes, make mistakes, have mechanicals, maybe bonk, because it was such a hard day and it was hot as well. But it just doesn't happen. Everyone's just so good all day, which is the thing. So like, there's no like if after 4 stages you're in 10th, the best you're going to get is like 8th.
Yeah.
You're not going to jump 5 places on the last stage or whatever. You know. So yeah, I think you need to be consistently really, really fast.
And do you think like consistency, i.e. staying uninjured as well, right? That just being able to train and ride for a couple of years without any interruption from time out to injury and stuff.
Yeah, I think so. And there are riders who manage that very well. Like some riders come and go with injury quite often, but still seem to come back very fast.
Yeah. Jack Moyer, I guess, would be one example, right? He seems to be
incredible. Yeah,
turn it on.
Casper Woolley as well, his teammate. Like he's had some of the gnarliest injuries, and he just comes back the same speed.
Yeah,
like it's amazing. But I think it's just racing well, training well, and just trying to consistently move forwards. For me, anyway. Like for me, I'd be kind of one that would make smaller steps over a long period of time. Okay. Not one that's gonna have a light bulb moment and just find 5% of speed. So for me, it's just building gradually.
Yeah, nice one. So you're back on your own. Are you missing anything about being in a team?
Some things, like in terms of support, like I've got it with me, which is brilliant. You know, we're traveling, as I say, my mechanic, my filmer, my girlfriend. So like when everyone is there, I'm one rider with 3 people around me.
Yeah. Sweet.
So I'm being helped out as much as I've ever been, maybe even more, which is amazing. Sometimes you would miss having a teammate, someone to bounce off, someone to ride with during the week or whatever. But there's still the cool thing with Enduro is we're all friends and there's a good crew around, so you still find people to hang out with. But yeah.
And upsides to being like a solo operator, admittedly, like you've got your crew around you, but
I think the flexibility, you know, especially in the off season, like if I felt like I needed a certain type of riding, I didn't need to wait for a team camp to be organised. I could just book a flight and go somewhere, or load the van and go somewhere. So that's been really good, and as well with the race weeks, you know, I can decide when I arrive, when I do track walk, whatever. So that's been really good. Yeah.
I guess you've got to do your own kind of media and promotion stuff, but also you're not then like being pulled by a sponsor to go and do something necessarily. You have a bit more say over your own time and schedule, maybe.
Yeah, exactly. And like Tom, the filmer, he's been brilliant on the media side. He's been so helpful this year with doing my YouTube stuff and Instagram stuff, and you know, he's super keen to help with that and get creative with it. So that's really taken a big weight off me, because Enduro's an interesting one. Like I don't know if there's many sports where the riders do as much media work. Like you look at Charlie Murray this year, he's
on it, huh?
Yeah, he's on it, and like he's putting a lot of time and effort into it, and it's impressive.
Same with Jack with Moi TV, and
yeah, exactly. So it's good to be able to get involved in that, but without having to invest too much of my own time and energy.
Yeah, fair. You got plenty of other things going on. So
yeah, exactly. Yeah.
I wanted to talk a little bit before we wrap up about the Irish scene. I guess you've been a big part of growing the scene out there and showing and inspiring Irish riders, showing them what's possible, and the scene's, I guess, grown. And now you've got young downhill riders as well, like Ronan and Oisin. Yet again, kind of leading the charge and buoying up that like Irish riding community. How is it these days, and how has it changed since you were a kid and started riding?
Yeah, it's amazing. It's so cool, and like the buzz coming off Ronan and Oisin at the moment is brilliant. Yeah, like everyone at home is so buzzing on it, and it's so cool to see that. Just to see Irish riders doing well, and especially at downhill, because we don't have the biggest hills, and on paper maybe it doesn't really make sense, but the boys have put in the work, and they've come out swinging, haven't they?
They have.
So it's really cool. In terms of the scene at home, it's crazy. Like I think having the EWS those 3 years really changed things. Yeah. For mountain biking as a whole, because it really put it in the limelight of the government and just day-to-day people. Like I think the amount of people, like I was out riding once, it's a few years ago now, and there was a guy I think in his 50s, and he was out mountain biking, and he was just buzzing, and he was telling me like, I got into it, I went and watched this race, blah blah blah.
Nice.
And it just made me love mountain biking, and I told him like, and he said like, "Oh, a local guy won it," and I was like, "Oh, that was me that won
me.
it," and he gave me a big hug.
Oh, no
Because he was
way.
just like, "Yeah, you got me into mountain biking," and I was like,
Mate, that's so cool.
like, it's crazy, it's amazing,
Yeah.
and to see now like the trail development going on. Like, I think there was a grant of 13 million from the government to build trails in Ireland.
Whoa.
So we've got, I think there's like 7 trail centres around the country.
Yeah.
And the standard of trails is unbelievable. Like, it's nuts. Like, my local hill, we used to go up there when I started riding, and you'd get told off by walkers. And there was a handful of tracks, but they were not very good. And now you go up there and like there's purpose-built world-class trails, and there's still like off-piste stuff as well. And then so that's the front of that hill is that trail centre. This is Ticknock.
Yeah.
And in the back of the hill, there's a bike park, the Gap, Glencullen Adventure Park, and they've got uplifts. They've got so many tracks.
Amazing.
Like a crazy amount of tracks. And like that used to be a golf course.
Yeah.
And in the recession, the golf course closed and they reopened it as a bike park, which is like, what, like how? That's crazy, you know?
Yeah.
And like you go there any day of the week, especially on the weekends, and there's such a buzz around the place. The place is packed.
Yeah.
Everyone's just loving biking. So yeah, like I genuinely think around Dublin is one of the best places in the world to ride bikes now.
How does it feel to have been, part of doing that, promoting that?
Yeah, cool. Like I wouldn't take too much credit. I think there's a lot of people who've done a lot of work behind it.
But the Irish win at home, I think, was a big deal, right? I think that really did kind of spark a few things.
Yeah, for sure. It was big. It was definitely big for the sport, and just to see it, how it's gradually grown from then until now is incredible. Yeah, it's amazing.
Have you had much chance to ride with Oisin and Ronan when you've been at home?
A good bit, yeah. Like Ronan lives 20 minutes from me, so we do when we're both home at the same time. Yeah. We do ride, and he's very good at. Whenever we get home, he'll send you a text saying, "Let's go riding." Yeah, which is really good. Oisin's a bit further away, so I haven't ridden with him so much. Actually, funny story. I did a coaching day with his like club when he was like 12 or something. His dad actually organised it, Chris. Yeah. And it was so funny because he was like so flash. He had all the kit, and he was such a good little rider. And he was on this hardtail, and I was kind of teaching him about like kind of race lines and racecraft. So like opening up turns and being smooth and carrying speed, that kind of thing. And he just wanted to shred. And it was like this corner, and there was like a few bumps coming in, and it was like a left-hand berm. And I was saying like, oh yeah, you could set up and like get the entry wider and carry a bit of speed. And Oisin was just coming in, manualing through the bumps on his little hardtail, and like doing like a Scandi flick and then like slapping the berm. And I was like, yeah, that was class, but like not what it's like.
Not gonna win a race.
Let's try this, like this thing. And he just came in and did the same thing again. And I was like, right, there's no telling this kid. He knows what he's doing.
Fair play.
But hell of a rider, and he has been a hell of a rider since such a young age. So,
and both taking World Cup wins in the not so distant past.
Yeah,
cool.
Amazing.
And more to come, I think.
More to come, and they're both consistent now as well. Like it's not just a flash in the pan.
Yeah,
they're both like they got a good head on their shoulders, and they're racing to win now. It's like I think when Oisin won in snowshoe, it was a bit of a surprise, maybe.
Oh, you could see it on his face, right? I don't think he believed he could win a World Cup at that point. And now he knows he can.
Yeah, exactly. Whereas now, like, I think the two of them are maybe nearly disappointed if they're not on the podium, which is like such a cool place to be in for both of them. And for us as fans to watch as well. It's cool to see them riding with that confidence.
Yeah, 100%. Nice one, man. Well, we should start wrapping up. And when we chatted last time, we only had 3 final questions. We now have 4. Ooh. So we've got 1 more to do. And that is what is one thing you do every day that you feel benefits you?
Every single day?
Well, or that you would like to think you do every day, but maybe don't quite always manage it.
Probably ride a bike.
Yeah,
I would say. Like I'd probably ride 6 days a week, and you definitely feel better afterwards.
Do you find it hard to rest or not? Are you getting better at that?
If the weather's good, it's very hard. Yeah,
especially living out here, right? You've got good trails.
Yeah, there's always something, because especially I think like I've got quite a few different bikes, so there's always one that you're like, oh, I'd love to do that ride on that bike,
Excellent.
Yeah,
nice. So there's never a bad bike ride, I think.
No, any day on a bike's a good day.
Even if you look out and it's raining and you're like, I'm not sure about this. Once you get stuck in, you come home with a smile on your face.
Yeah, exactly.
Nice one. Well, it's been an absolute pleasure catching up, mate. If people want to follow you throughout the season, where's the best place to be looking? Yeah,
Instagram at Greg_Callaghan and Greg Callaghan on YouTube. We've been doing race videos recap from each race, trying to give a bit of insight into what's happening. So yeah, tune in for those.
Sweet. Yeah, we'll stick links in the show notes for all that stuff. But yeah, thanks, man. I hope the rest of the season goes well. Hope the build continues. And yeah, look forward to seeing where it goes, mate.
Yeah, thanks very much.
Nice one. Cheers, Greg.
Cheers.